This is Aer Dogs, a podcast series on the aviation industry that will take you from the boardroom to the boarding gates. In episode 1 of Aer Dogs, we meet Tom Lyons, author of Aer Dogs and founder of The Currency. We dig deeper into his research of the book, his experience of interviewing and getting to know the Aer Dogs.
How are you? Welcome to Aer Dogs. Following on the release of the book Aer Dogs, we are starting a podcast hosted by yours truly, myself, Dec Ryan, and there'll be other hosts involved with it too as well. I'll be interviewing aviators, C-suite executives, managers, and many more. To start us off, and our first interview, and I think it's very appropriate that our first interview is the author of Aer Dogs, Tom Lyons. Tom, you're very welcome.
Oh, thank you, Declan.
We kick off with this quirky question, and it's probably not 100% appropriate for you because we're talking to different people in the industry, but have you become an aerosexual? Is the industry getting
under my skin? Well, the first thing I'd say is that I didn't realise how important planes were to me until they were taken away in 2020.
Okay.
And suddenly you realise entire experiences, friends, people, relatives, they're all gone. Yeah. They're going through things in their lives. I'm not there for them. Yeah. They're doing deals. They're celebrating moments. I'm not there for them. Yeah. And
was there something in particular you missed that you just seen?
It was just the inability to see my family in the States. The inability to people are having friends are having children. My brother is living in Holland at the time. I can't get there. Yeah. And that was something that really came home to me, Dec, when we spoke about doing a book about the Irelandia story and about the Aer Dogs. It was this sense that, man, you miss planes when you don't have them. Yeah. Zoom is not the same.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You need to meet people. You need to experience things, and that came home to me. And then, obviously, doing the book, you get a better sense of the industry and the people who are pushing the tin around the place, and you get a sense of their stories, and they're exciting, and they're pioneering, they're adventurous, and that really did suck me in. So I'd say I didn't start an aerosexual, but
you're creeping.
I'm getting there.
Good. You're going to love this question from me. Was it easy to write?
It was very difficult, Dec.
Yeah.
And I'd say
I wasn't trying to wind you up there.
I think I was very lucky in the sense that there had been a book about Tony Ryan, which was written by Richard Aldous, which was incredibly useful, and there had been a book about Viva, which is written by Rupert Stebbings. So I had two books to work off. On the other hand, it was a 30-year period. Not everybody was there all the way. I mean, there's one character who runs through the book, and that's you. But other people are in and out of the book. So trying to pull together the timelines, the facts, what actually happened was challenging. And then you want to make it interesting. Like these are, we see IPOs, we see M&A deals, we see, near bankruptcies, we see some negotiations with private equity firms. And you're trying to make that interesting. And the way to do that is to bring in the people and try and tell their stories and make them come to life, whilst trying to manage like the number of characters in the book. Like people when see this is about the Ryans. It's not just about the Ryans. It's about it's about the Paula Dohertys, about the Stephen Maxwells. It's about the Michael Lynches. It's about the John Goods. So there's Brian Mulville. All these different people who are coming in, and they all have their backstories, and you've got to make them interesting, that people engage with it, and that they find the story compelling, and that they care about the characters. Are they all going to go bust? Are they all going to be killed in the pandemic? Are they all going to make it? And that's the really interesting thing about the book is trying to tell the story of those people and the challenges they faced.
Okay, great. Can we just stay on that path? And how important all the dogs are to me. They're a eclectic bunch, aren't they?
They are very interesting characters, because you wouldn't say, what would be the thing?
Maybe the word I should use, sorry Tom, is varied rather than eclectic, but
they're very, like, they all have different backgrounds. I mean, if you look at, say, somebody like Anthony Carr, he's an out-and-out dub. There's no denying it. And he's a guy who...
Beaumont through and through.
Yeah, worked his way up.
And
then you've got people from Galway, you've got people from Tipperary, you've got people from Donegal with Scottish roots. So you've all these different characters. So they're all very different, but things that I think that are interesting about them is that they all start off in their 20s. In the book, everybody starts in their 20s, where they've some form of an encounter with the Tony Ryan, the Ryanair, their Irlandia story, and gradually they're sucked in. And in most cases, it takes them about 20 years to get out again. And that's interesting too, Dec, is that, like, this is such an intense experience for them that they come in and they're thrown into it. It's 24 hours a day, it's 7 days a week. And then they come out the other side and they go on to great things, or in some cases they're still with you.
Yeah. Well, they're always with me. I don't say that in a kind of cheesy way. Paula's not there day to day, but every time I see her, it's great, and we have laughs and so on and so on. I don't know if people know enough about you. So can you tell us a bit? I'm not kind of going from college to where you are now, but just more a bit about the currency. Your subscribers would know about the currency, and some people in the media obviously wouldn't know, but can you just fill us in a bit about the currency and where you're going and what you think about it?
Well, the currency, it is about telling great business stories, often through long form, well written journalism, or using some sort of an analytic approach to understanding a sector or a group of companies or why this theme is happening. So it's definitely a publication that is trying to give deeper insights, deeper understandings, and tell people stories. So that, I think that's the currency is trying to be something that takes the best of the New Yorker, the Atlantic, and combines it with the analytical, fact-based approach that you'd see in Bloomberg or The Economist.
Quality stories.
That's what we're striving for.
Yeah, for sure. And some bit more about subscribers or your marketplace, or.
We have we've 7,000 members.
Wow.
So
is that public knowledge?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So we are small. There's no other way to describe it, but we would be. We would see our audience as decision makers, or people who are super fans of business, who want to learn, and who are doing things and are active in business. So it's the business currently. It's very much, I'd say it's urban. It's not pitched. We're not going after the Irish Farmers Journal market
for sure.
And it's urban, and we're trying to. It's for people who are looking outwards, who are thinking about the UK, who are thinking about the States, who are thinking about growing their business. Yeah,
for sure. You and I have bonded as pals over the last couple of years, but I always wonder, what's it like when your day job is media and journalism to write a book? Is it different skill sets? Is it different disciplines? Is it?
It's definitely different, as you need to, you're getting deeper into it. So you're getting further and further into what are the motivations and what makes people do what they do. So, I think that's a great opportunity. It's like it's to sit down with somebody and talk to them for 2 or 3 hours and try and tease out just what happened over a 30-year period, over a 10-year period. Like, that's a great, it feels like a luxury in some ways, but it's a great opportunity and experience to get even deeper into a story. So it is different to the average long form story, and you're also trying to knit it all together and make it compelling. And that is hard over 2,000 words, but try doing it over close to 100,000.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, and if I got everything right, Tom, which a lot of times I don't, but anyway, if I got it right, you were doing your day job, you were being a dad, you were being a husband, and writing the book at the same time.
Yeah, it was tough because I would certainly, it took weekends and it took late nights.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're trying to keep the currency going, and then we have a young daughter who was only 1.5 when the book started.
Yeah.
And that was it was a sacrifice to not be with her.
Of course.
On the other hand, you're trying to. One of the things that you see when you get up close to people and you're telling their story, you're like, this is such an interesting story.
Yeah.
She's not going to read it anytime soon, Dec.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to when she does, because she'll go.
Yeah.
She will get an understanding how these people did what they did.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll inspire her to think about doing something, or to think about not being afraid of pushing the limits, or not be afraid of looking outside Ireland.
Cool.
And going to places where there's a need, or that there's an opportunity, and taking a risk.
That actually does very well move into one thing I want to show you. Talk to me a bit about Colombia, because that is outside your box, and not you meet people. I meet people all over the world, Tom, and they said they've never been to South America. So talk to us a little bit about Colombia and how you found it.
Well, if you think back to what were we all doing during the pandemic? I know you weren't doing it, Dec, because you were down there quite a bit at the time. But for myself, I'm watching Narcos. And I'm seeing a story which, it's a great story, but it's very violent, and it's very dangerous, and there's no rule of law, and there's that would be your kind of.
So you had the perception.
That would be a perception of Colombia.
Yeah.
But getting there, you can see that this is a very dynamic economy. You can see that there's lots of people doing things and investing. There's very exciting fintech sector. There's the aviation sector. There's tourism sector, which is only coming together.
Yeah.
And you're also seeing this history of, guerrillas and the FARC that is quite similar to Ireland when you look at it. Yeah. They're coming from a similar background of, injustice, struggles, crime, murder, all that type of stuff. And they're trying to sort themselves out. And I think you see that entrepreneurialism. You do see much more starkly the inequality. Yeah,
for sure.
Much more starkly than here.
Oh, yeah,
and
for sure.
It's unequal here too, but over there it's something else.
You were up in Cartagena, and Cartagena is beautiful, and it's an old Spanish fortress town. But you don't have to go far in Cartagena to see, serious widespread poverty.
You need to go, 3 roads over there.
Yeah.
And it was the same in all of the cities there, that you could be in, a hotel or a restaurant that would be better than here.
Yeah.
And yet 2 roads over, there are people who are struggling, or there's people who are addicted to drugs, or there's refugees who have nothing. So that sense of that there is definitely an edge to Colombia that you wouldn't see in most places.
Certainly, what I've learned, Tom, about Colombia, and I adore the place, is there's 2 Colombias. There's the urban Colombia, and then the rural Colombia. And the rural Colombia is it's dynamic, but the levels of poverty are shocking.
Well, one thing that did jump out at me, Dec, was the how mountainous the place is, and how difficult it is to travel by road from A to B.
For sure.
And they've these very deep tunnels carving through the mountains. And I'm moving from, relatively populated area to relatively populated area. I can imagine how when you go further out, the roads break down. The mountains are just as steep, and getting around it is tough if you don't have planes.
And you have it in the book. Bogota to Medellin is 28-minute flight. It's 9 hours by road, and they're not bad engineers. It's mountains, and it's topography, and it's flooding. It's everything,
It's extraordinary that you could have a country, of 40 million people or 50 million, and yet distance can be such a barrier
for sure
between them. And that was definitely something that interests me about the book too, Dec, was how bringing airplanes, how airplanes can bring a place together, and bring a place and an economy together that's coming out of some very bad times.
For sure.
And that it can knit people together, make them feel like that they're Colombians, rather than feeling they're from their area.
Well, you said it very well yesterday or the other day. Sorry, the last time you did the, I think it was the Claire Byrne show. I can't remember exactly what date it was, but what is it, 4% when we started had been in an airplane, and
it got to 30. Like you think about today in Ireland, I'd say it's 80% plus.
For sure.
And you look at the opportunities, people going to London, going to Lisbon, going to Paris. That's not remarkable. Whereas even when I think back to growing up, like I remember, going to London at the age of 9 or 10. And that was the first time in a plane.
And if you're like me, and I was an Aer Lingus kid, your folks made you dress up.
The
good clothes.
It was a big deal.
For sure.
And it was a flight that's going to cost you, probably more back then than today. Like it was like £200 or £300.
For sure.
Nowadays, you might still pay that if you're booking tomorrow. But in general, if you're booking ahead, you'd never pay that type of money.
Can we move back home for a sec? Why, and I might be too close to it, or Joe Gill or Eamon Brennan, people in the industry, Conor and so on, Conor McCarthy. Is there a reason you think the Irish government doesn't take aviation more seriously? Is that the right way to phrase it?
I think that I think the industry does need to tell its story.
Sorry to cut across. You're saying we're bad at telling it.
That
I think you might be right, but
I think that it needs to tell its story more. It's not to say I think that the people you meet in, and once you talk to them, they've got great stories. But to tell it more, because you're like, all of these hotels, these golf courses, these tourism spots, they're all fueled by people coming in on planes. And if you look at the aviation leasing sector, the amount of money that's bringing into the greater Dublin economy is astonishing.
Particularly the jobs.
Like these are jobs that very highly paid jobs, interesting jobs. They're not boring, and they involve travel. They involve big sums. They involve they're compelling jobs. So I think that is a challenge for the industry to tell that story, but also that there is a level of complacency, I would say, in the government in relation to the industry, because they're...
what I'm trying to get to, Tom, and I like people who aren't in the sector to help us on this, is why is that? Like you mentioned the IFA earlier. They are world class at getting the story across. Why aren't we better at it? Is there a bit of arrogance?
Well, there's a bit of we've had a really great run, Dec, where you've had... they like Ryanair, despite everything, has been a great success. Aer Lingus, despite everything, has become a great success. And you've got Dublin Airport, which has become a great success. And then there's this kind of sense of, well, we've been doing really well at that. We'll just, we don't...
A bit like our current rugby team, that we kind of don't have to worry about it, or...
Yeah, you get that sense, well, sure, we turn up and we win. I don't think we can assume that necessarily, and I think
the IFA would never assume that.
They will fight their corner, and they are plugged deeply into politics and into politicians, and they fight their corner and they protest and they do what they do. Whereas I think that because aviation has been so successful, that there's maybe a sense that that'll just continue, and they're deprioritized because they're not shouting enough.
Just to make sure, as I didn't upset too many of my pals there talking about arrogance, I was asked by Frank Ryan when he was running Enterprise Ireland to look at aviation in Ireland, and in my own way I got a couple of intelligent people around the table and then I let them off on it. I think, in effect, what came out was, let's say we have 50% of the world's aircraft leasing market, which is ginormous. And the number one thing on the report was to keep it at 50%. that doesn't get a politician excited, you know.
Yeah.
The other thing we said is concentrate more on the MROs, what Connor does and what Patrick Jordan does with Atlantic Aviation and so on. I part of this is I asked 2 or 3 of my other pals to get involved, and they said they were too busy.
Yeah.
And I kind of barked at them, and then kind of went, lads, you know, we're all busy, but that's where the arrogance kind of kicked in for me a bit.
Well, if you think, it's 50 years this year since GPA was founded, and you think that's about, well, how do we maintain our success rather than how do we set ourselves up for the next 10, 20, 50 years? Yeah. That's not the way we're thinking.
Yeah.
There is that, how do we maintain how do we defend what we have
Yeah.
instead of saying, could we do more?
Yeah.
And could we think bigger?
Yeah.
And you can see that out in, the current, debacle out in Dublin Airport, where they've got the passenger cap.
So what's your view on that?
My view is that this is a critical piece of infrastructure, and we should prioritise its expansion.
Yeah.
And prioritise expansion big time.
Yeah.
And you look at what if FDI goes away?
Yeah.
What if some of the big multinationals close? Yeah. What are we going to be reliant on? Well, we're going to be reliant on tourism and access. We are a tiny island who's been out punching and out fighting for years, and you've got to say we need to start thinking, making the access smoother and more accessible, and realizing we have Ryanair headquartered here. Yeah. We have all of these great opportunities which may not be here in 50 years' time.
For sure.
You don't know, what the ownership structure could be in the future.
Yeah.
You don't know what could happen. And certainly if we have an airport that is best in class, one of the best in the world, that's going to be securing the country's future for the longer term.
Yeah.
And I know people talk about emissions and all of that, and they're right to, but inevitably, planes are getting more and more efficient all the time.
For sure.
And we need to be preparing now for expansion.
Yeah, for
Whereas
sure.
if we leave it sit, we'll fall behind.
Yeah. He's a pal of mine, but also I think he's doing a great job with Kenny Jacobs out there. And I don't think Kenny is trying to build a Singapore, a Changi. What he's trying to build is a really good UK train station, and I say that with respect because I love UK train stations, and I love when the train goes off at 3:02, when it's meant to, and so on. So I think that's what Kenny's doing. It's going to be efficient. It's not going to be gold plated. It's not going to be like some of the Middle East airports and so on. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be functional and no screw ups at security and all that kind of stuff.
It just needs to work.
Yeah. For sure.
And it needs to be set up for an economy and a population that is going to grow.
Yeah.
And you look at all of the signals, like a place like Ireland is a fantastic place to be located, to be based, and we need to think about, well, what will the country look like in 20 years' time, and what can we do now to get our airports ready for that?
Yeah.
And if we do that, I think that's going to be really securing things for multiple generations.
Yeah.
Whereas if we continue to flute around and not make these decisions, we're just going to see the money moves elsewhere, the planes move elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And as we know, they're very mobile assets. Young man, your favourite author? Or authors are probably a wrong question to ask.
God, that is a tough one, Dick. I would have said Walter Isaacson for his Steve Jobs and his Elon Musk, but seeing how the Elon Musk story has developed and mutated into this.
I presume you read it. Did you?
Yeah, I read both of it. So that I love that long form telling the story. But on the other hand, you think that that book was flawed.
Okay. I think it was flawed for different. Why do you think it was flawed?
I think it always gave him the benefit of the doubt, and it did give some incredible insights
into Musk.
Into Musk. But then you look at how quickly he has skewed towards the right, and towards very reactionary conspiracy theories and all the rest of it. I still think it's a must read, and I still think it's a great book, but there is a flaw there.
Okay, so he's not being as, because I'm a big fan of his as well, he's not being consistent with his previous books.
Yes, and I you would also have to say, like his previous books, he's writing about people who have passed away. Yeah. So it's easy to tell most of them, like you look at Steve Jobs or Einstein
or the one on Da Vinci. It's just out of this world.
So he's got the benefit of that, whereas he's now writing a book in real time, live, stepping into the world of journalism. Like journalism is it's flawed because it's the first draft. Whereas previously, he could step back and he could really look at everything that we know and sync it together. Whereas Musk has just taken this incredible turn. I mean, it's I don't know whether there'll be a new edition written by him, but somebody needs to write another book, or a historian's be writing about him in decades to come.
Off you go, Tom. Here's the next one. Wait for the kids to be a bit older. Couple of other things. One of the questions we'd like to ask is, if you had the opportunity to go for a beer or a bit of dinner with somebody in the industry, is there anybody you came across that you say?
Well, I would say that, like, I am very interested in Willie Walsh.
For sure.
He actually did his business or his MBA or certainly he was a master's in business with my father-in-law.
Okay.
So my father-in-law would know him.
Where was this?
This was in Spurford Business School. Okay, cool. So he would know him, and he would have great stories about him. And he's he's had a very interesting journey,
for sure,
with various turning points. In particular, if he'd been able to take over Aer Lingus, what might have happened there. You look at his decision to set up the IAG group. That's extraordinary. His departure, that's super
can
interesting.
I stop you? And Willie's an amazing guy in many ways. I think for an Irishman who was running British Airways at the time, which is, it was like Peter Sutherland in BP. It was just, you never thought a Paddy would be up there, right? And then to set up IAG, and the Spanish let him do it. Like, it shows you how clever the Spanish were, because Sean Doyle's over in BA now, but the rest of the IAA group is all Spanish. So Willie was phenomenal in the way he...
I remember I met him 10 or 15 years ago when he was the CEO, and just being how extraordinary the scale of the operation, the scale of what they were doing was so big, and the scale of the ambition, and how he could handle every question. And there were some tricky ones, because I think there'd been a plane that had landed very badly. Nobody was injured, but it was a screw up. No other way. The confidence.
So that was I think it was a 787, and it was in Heathrow, and it had the landing gear didn't come down. But Willie wheeled out the captain and all the crew the following day, and it's the beauty about British Airways. You get on a British Airways flight, and you have a guy who sounds like he's just ex-military and very proficient, and you just feel safe, and Willie knew that, and being a captain himself, he knew that the captain was good, so he wheeled them out. He was very clever.
Like that Willie Wall, and Alan Joyce would be up there too.
Oh, for sure.
Just because I have been following his story closely. So I've read, there's 2 books out. One that is very fair and kind to him.
One to Alan.
To Alan, and one which takes him apart. And you're like, neither of those extremes can be true. There has to be a middle ground here. And again, just the scale of the operation he was building, the ambition, the things that he did. I mean, he went up against you in the book with a low fares airline, and then he takes over the entire business. I'd love to hear his version of events. And fact check each bit of it.
And he's one of my heroes. And listen, a guy from West Dublin taking over Qantas is... Right, it's just an amazing story, but and I don't think Alan would mind me saying this, but getting challenged about his sexuality, he got challenged. This crazy stuff, and particularly in Australian Parliament, you can say anything. I think at one stage somebody called him a IRA bomb thrower. You know, like, you know, how you would, like, you know, anybody call me that? But he is an amazing. They're both amazing individuals.
Yeah, well, I just think, well, his kind of like his view from, and it, like, the press turned against him so harshly.
Yeah.
That, like, when the dust settles to see, you look at what were his achievements, and they were great.
Yeah.
But also what were his challenges and where did he make the mistakes?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, you know, if you could see them with a bit of perspective, you might see them differently.
Yeah.
Like, he made the decisions based on the information he had.
Yeah. And a mind of steel. Like, you know, once he got his team behind it, and, you know, some of the decisions were like, let him go 15% of Qantas staff, and you know, for an Irishman to be doing that, you know. But anyway, kind of my last question I'd like to ask you, and you may be, I might be missing a few points, is when people come up to you about the book, what do you want them to get out of it? When somebody finishes the book and they're sitting at home, what would you like them?
I think that they would have a sense of adventure and possibility.
Yeah.
And how people make a difference in terms of, you know, digging deep and keeping going, and, you know, sometimes having to make tough decisions. Like, it's not like holding on for dear life. Like the trades have to be done. To get a sense of adventure and get a sense of outward lookingness and a sense that you're on this small island, but you can do anything. Yeah. And I think that's what I'd like people to get excited about business and get excited about the sector. Like, this is a really interesting sector, which we're number one at, and yet you need that next generation to keep coming up.
For sure.
You know, you need the Brian Mulvihill who you know, has left Irlandia, started his own company. You know, you need those people coming through and reinvigorating the sector. And and that entrepreneurialism is really, really interesting and exciting. And just to see how, like, you're telling a story that is a modern story, but you're also looking back to the early days of Ryanair and seeing, like, that is one of the most inspiring stories, and we're getting a new insight into it. And it's the story that, you know, most people think they know. But I still think that there's more to it, and there's different aspects to it, and we've picked up on some aspects. But it's one of the all-time great companies. Like, there's only 3 or 4 of them out there.
And my own view on that is that story has to be told by Michael, and I'm not sure he'll ever tell it. I'm not making assumptions, but, you know, that's a story that has to come from Michael's mouth. And
it definitely, because, like, I think our book, you know, the Ryanair story stops around 2002, 2003. And you're like, so many extraordinary things happened afterwards.
For sure.
That I don't think he's somebody who, as long as he's the CEO, I don't see him looking back. He's looking forward.
Or he'll ever look back. You know,
will he ever look back? I don't know. But like
at Tony's funeral, he made a lovely comment about that Tony's TV remote only had a go forward button. That there was no button about going back. And I think Michael's a bit like that as well.
Well, I think to have stayed at the top for so long and to not be, you know, it's gone way, you know, he was rich a long time ago. He doesn't need to do any of this stuff. So why does he do it? And that doing it is such an interesting, it's like getting to the bottom of that. It'd be really to hear his explanation. But is he that type of person? He might not be, Dick. Like, he may not want to look back, but I think his legacy is going to be immense.
For sure.
And he's not finished.
And it's a bit ironic. You know, I was starting to look into this and so on. Like, the biography hasn't been the biography hasn't been written of Herb Kelleher, and I think that's a sin. But, you know, their family aren't sure about it, and, you know, my own view when we did Tony's book was you have to have most of the family on side. You're not going to have everybody on side, but if a family's not on side on somebody who's passed, you know, it's just, in my view, it's not worth it. But Herb's book would be pretty cool as well.
That would be an amazing book, and one you'd want to read. And it's kind of like, it is tough, but like, you know, like when I look at the Tony Ryan book, you know, there's aspects of it you'd kind of go, if you were the family, you're like, oh God, do we want that in the book? But it's in the book. And I think that that's important because it shows, successful people, they're never successful in every single aspect of their life. That doesn't exist.
Well, Richard said to me, it was going to be warts and all. And if you start off from that, like there was 2 bits in the book I went, oh shit. Yeah. And I called him up about it. And one was about a word and the other was about an incident. And he said, Dec, if we don't put those in, you're not doing it warts and all. So yeah, for sure. Tom, you probably don't realize it, but the amount of messaging we're getting about the book, it's great. Like I never thought it. Somebody asked me what success was like for the book, and I said about 6 months ago, it's successful. And they go, why? I said, it's written, and it's written well. But you've done an amazing job on it, I think.
Oh, thank you, Dec. And like from my point of view, it was just capturing it because it's a point in time.
Yeah.
It's like it's a 30, 40-year story, but it is to capture people's recollections and knit it all together. It was challenging, but it's also it's worth doing because like the legacies of these airlines are there, and these people are going to go on and do great things, and that was something that was like, it was rewarding pulling it together, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Okay, let's end on that. Thanks, Tom. That was great.
You've been listening to Aer Dogs, brought to you by Irlandia Aviation and in conjunction with the Aer Dogs book by Tom Lyons. If you enjoyed listening to this interview, please subscribe or leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts.